How does cold butter create the flakiest pie crust? Imagine biting into a pie with a crust that melts in your mouth and has those perfect flaky layers. What makes that happen? It all comes down to how you handle the butter. When you start with cold butter, it stays in small, solid chunks within the dough. These chunks act like tiny barriers that prevent the gluten from forming too tightly. Gluten is what makes dough tough if it develops too much, so keeping it tender is key. As the pie bakes, the cold butter begins to melt. But because it was cold and in pieces, it doesn't blend completely into the flour. Instead, it creates pockets of fat surrounded by flour. When the oven heats up, the water in the butter turns into steam. This steam pushes against the dough, forming tiny air pockets. These pockets cause the dough to puff up and separate into layers, giving you that flaky texture we all love. Using cold butter also helps with the layering process. When you cut the butter into the flour or grate frozen butter into the mix, it stays cold longer. This minimizes the chance of the butter melting before baking. The less the butter melts early, the more distinct layers you get when the pie is baked. Some bakers even fold the dough multiple times, creating more layers of butter and dough. This folding technique boosts flakiness because more layers mean more steam pockets during baking. Handling the dough carefully is important. You want to keep the butter cold and avoid overmixing. Overworking the dough warms the butter and makes it blend into the flour, resulting in a tougher crust. To keep the butter cold, many bakers chill the dough in the fridge for at least 30 minutes before rolling it out. They also use ice water to mix the dough, which helps keep everything cold during the process. In the end, the secret to that perfectly flaky pie crust is the cold butter. It stays in small pieces, melts slowly, and creates steam that lifts the layers apart. Proper handling, minimal mixing, and sometimes folding techniques all work together to produce a crust that's tender, crisp, and full of those beautiful flaky layers. That's how cold butter makes your pie crust stand out with that irresistible flakiness.